我在北京。
This is the side of China they do not want you to see. They don't want you to know that Xi Jinping is actually chill like that. Hi again, my fellow Americans, or at least I assume you are if you relate to anything I'm about to say, where depending on how the next few days goes after the day I'm writing this, January 18th, the day the TikTok ban went into effect, we are either all feeling the sting of the first week with no doom scroll application, or the ban got reversed and we are feeling the sting of forgetting that nothing ever happens. At least in the short term, we obviously all sought to fill the void with something else to endlessly scroll on, and an unlikely phoenix rose from the ashes in what many people were calling the Chinese version of TikTok, Xiao. And if that sounds familiar, please refer to this clip of the Yap Dollar.
After the ritual has been completed, I deposit the bottle cap into my special jar for Mexican Coke bottle caps. Every cap brings back a different memory of my consumption of the sweet, sweet liquid. Xiao.
That's right, that word is the Yap Dollar's outro catchphrase and roughly translates to Little Red Book. It may not be an intentional reference, the founder of the app said it came from his education in college, but the name feels like a pretty overt reference to Mao Zedong, the founder of the People's Republic of China, and his Little Red Book, as we call it in English, Quotations from Chairman Mao Zedong. Not to be confused with The Week That Changed the World, Nixon and Mao, or Xi Jinping's thoughts to help better understanding China in the world, which happens to be red, but is not very little at all. Nah, the app we're talking about bears the name of the original, second most important Little Red right after Riding Hood. The app is called RedNote in English-speaking territories, though, either because it sounds better or to create some distance from the original translation, I'm not sure. But basically, ahead of the ban on TikTok, people were using their last days alive on there to figure out where are we all gonna go next, and RedNote took off virally as the place most similar to TikTok. And within 2 weeks, the app saw millions of new signups, almost all of them from the United States. People were saying on TikTok what name you could find them under on RedNote, and it became the most downloaded app on the App Store. And transplants fleeing to RedNote became known as TikTok refugees. And it's kind of ironic that people chose RedNote for refuge because the app is honestly a lot more like a Chinese Instagram than a Chinese TikTok. The question of where TikTok users would go after it was banned usually came down to either YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels, and it seemed like Meta was banking on this happening considering their history of hiring PR firms to malign TikTok several years ago, and heavy speculation that as they spent more money than ever lobbying in Congress in the first quarter of last year, that they had at least indirectly been doing so to encourage a ban of TikTok in the United States. Coincidentally, the ban passed shortly after that spending period. Yet, here you have Americans doing literally anything they can, even using Chinese Instagram, just so they never have to use a Facebook-adjacent platform ever again at all costs. For Christ's sake, you've got Americans willingly learning Mandarin, one of the hardest languages for native English speakers to learn, just so they can be on RedNote instead of Instagram. This shit is making Americans bilingual. I saw a kid practicing Chinese for his homework on that app the other day.
你好，我的名字是 Trent。
In advance, apologies for any Mandarin I may butcher during this video, but unlike all the other languages I mangle in videos, I'm actually trying to learn how to speak this one. Just as many times as that, though, I saw Chinese folk either being offered or asking for help on their English homework, where some random American would send a screenshot to them with all the answers to their test just circled out. It's like copying off your buddy who's smarter than you, except your buddy is a pen pal on the other side of the globe and might actually be dumber than you because they are not learning a second language. And amidst all this, there has been some genuine cross-cultural exchanges. I've seen people posting pictures of them and their immediate family introducing themselves, and then some random family over in mainland China will reply back saying hello from their own family. And you can see even bigger versions of this happening in multi-generational extended families, where it's like 10 to 15 people on either side of the exchange just saying, "Hi, it's us." These interactions are small and not huge in the grand scheme of things, and it's like, no shit, people in China exist and have full lives that they live. If you're just realizing that that was the case now, there might have been something else going on up there, and, you know, I'm glad to have you here now. But this direct line of communication between two seemingly isolated societies before this just does something to my heart, man. For me, it's not so much wonder at the idea of Chinese people having rich internal lives. Everyone has one. It came free with your being fucking sapient. My interest genuinely comes from the exchange happening, period. I just think it's neat that some dude can be like, "This is what I had for lunch at school today," and somebody else can be like, "Hey, that's awesome. look, this is what I had for lunch at school. And sure, that's sandwiched right between comments of people going, is this free? Or how do you live like this? How are you not dead? Will your school not be sued for feeding you this? That's a rough translation, but it is funny to read on its own. Listen, I'm under no illusions that it's this simple as like one anecdote. Conditions are different from school to school, state to state, fucking household to household in America. I can only assume it's the same in China. There's no such thing as a utopia, but the interaction happening at all is what I think is neat. But like any cultural exchange, you have to take the good with the bad, and both of those are going to combine in an infinite number of unexpected ways, which has led to a hilarious number of side quests popping up along the way. For one, there was this hoax going around that the supposed CEO of RedNote had made a video welcoming Americans to the app with open arms. And the video being cited, did welcome people from America and gave them some good points, but it turns out the guy who made it was actually just some random guy from Vancouver on the app, and who had been there for a while. And him and his girlfriend were absolutely laughing their asses off when they saw some of the shit that y'all were saying about them.
So yeah, I think people apparently think that you are the CEO
Bro,
of RedNote.
400k likes. This lady is my previous landlord, okay? She told me she saw me on TikTok.
I genuinely cannot imagine the countless amount of stories exactly like that one this dude has to tell now. He probably wishes he had a few less. If TikTok was not going away and he had those accolades, he could have launched a podcast and a shitcoined a rug pull off the strength of that one misunderstanding. And with that in mind, it's time for this video's singular capitalism break. I have new limited time merch available now at the first link in the description. This is a merch bundle full of a bunch of goodies from me. It includes stickers, keychains, pins, prints, a lot of which are first-time releases for me. One of them's a high-quality holographic acrylic print, and there's a limited edition metal card with my ass on it in there. There's only 200 of them being made, and each one is one of a kind, with the card number being printed on the thing. There's also this me-themed Christmas hat, which I know I'm more than a month too late to. Still, this bundle features the artwork of 3 incredible talents, Holo, Meg, and Alfiria. The theme for the prints was just straight fashion. I told Meg and Holo to go nuts on the outfit design, and they showed out with some of the dopest fits I have ever seen. Alfiria made the metal card and designs for the smaller items, which includes me doing the Poggers Sonic Adventure 2 pose, pissing lasers like the Death Star blowing up the moon, using Twitter way more than I should, and more. And if you want everything I just listed, buying the box set is the best deal and cheapest way to get everything on the store all in one. But if only a few of the items interest you, it's no worries, because every individual item is for sale on its own or in bundles of their own. Still, all of this will only be available for the next few weeks till February 8th, so if you want to snag them, check them out at the first link in the description. Anyways, back to, or I guess away from the business, the thing to know about RedNote is that it was only really built with Mandarin speakers in mind, and the people who use it internationally are mostly Chinese speakers outside of China who use it to look at Chinese content, and the occasional person who got autism for something from China that has next to no fandom presence in the West. And you gotta remember that most of the transplants to RedNote aren't just English speakers, they are American English speakers. And you know that we are gonna bring some bullshit wherever it is we go. I have already seen the calling the Kai Cenat skibbity toilet at 3 a.m. image macro in a comment section more than once. Sure, there were a lot of us who were like, my fellow American, we are guests in this house. Please translate your comments into Mandarin out of respect for the OGs. Thank you. And a lot of RedNote users have been doing the same in kind for us, translating their Mandarin into English. Plenty of people have been doing this both ways, which has allowed us to cross cultural barriers and the cross-cultural pollination to happen. But you also had a lot of people seeing a hot person on the app and going, ni hao, fine shit. And when one or two of these comments got screenshotted and broke containment to places like Twitter, you had people going like, here the fuck we go again, 2 seconds in, and the US Americans are already being weird. But simultaneously, it also became a thing that was very funny to say, ironically. Layers of irony are no longer a thing that take decades to form like it did with Rage comics. They just get applied by default now. On the good side, it did give us this banger Sebi song snippet.
Ni hao fun shit. Wanna be my bitch. Saw you on Xiao and I can't stop thinking about you. Ni hao fun shit. Want you to be my bitch. With you I'ma count this blue. I'ma count this red. Yeah.
Full release coming soon, I'm told. And look, there's absolutely some vile shit going down in those comment sections in both directions, especially with what certain new gens are posting to that app, but that kind of comes with the territory of new communication being built. And at least the RedNote OGs can give as good as they get insult-wise, and a lot of times they even waited for an invitation first. There's a few posts like this where we asked them to insult us and they just said, please don't shoot us when we do what you asked us to. So I'm gonna take some creative liberties with the delivery and where each one came from. Give me your best jokes and stereotypes about Americans so I can wake up to them in the morning. The Americans have come to Xiao even though there's no oil on Xiao. I saw one that said, why do y'all eat like your healthcare is free? Chat, they are cooking us and goddamn they season well. They might not know us as well as we know ourselves, but they can sure teach us something about ourselves. Contrast has this funny habit of making that happen. As funny as that is though, it does bring up a real divide where the reception to TikTok refugees joining the app en masse has been mixed. And that's to be expected. The cross-cultural exchange is cool, but others aren't so down for it because this was kind of theirs first. We're popping out of nowhere. Like this guy had something to say about it. POV, you are trying to scare those TikTokers off the app.
Hi guys, welcome. I'm having my lunch here. So this is a Chihuahua. We love, it's very tasty, very chewy, and this is his tears.
Okay, like this guy is obviously joking, and I think it's very funny as somebody who those stereotypes have been used against, but there is some real disagreement amongst the original population of the app in response to the influx of TikTok refugees flooding in. And before we continue, it should be said that I am looking at this from a distinctly American perspective. I am one of those bums going over to that app to see what it's about, ironically transforming the fabric of that app, making it so that I will never get a sense of what it was ever like before I showed up. Still, one thing that our favorite fake RedNote CEO mentioned was that the standard vibes on the app were pretty chill, especially compared to how they've been in the last few days and weeks. It was a place for shopping, fashion, restaurant, and local business recommendation. It was a bunch of chill shit, lifestyle, and shit posts. From my very, very narrow view of it, it was curated to be an area to escape from maybe the harsher parts of society. But with the addition of Americans to the app, and our tendency to discuss whatever we got going up here everywhere, whether that be about politics, emotions, or weird sexual fetishes, a lot of the TikTok refugees started talking about and asking questions real loudly to folk who hadn't really been coming to RedNote for that type of stuff going on years now. This one YouTuber I watch, Atriok, brought a few of these questions to the forefront in his video on this topic. How do you view socialism versus capitalism? Does age discrimination exist? And what have you always wanted to ask a black American? All things that were going on in the app. I personally saw people asking what debt was like in China versus America. And there were some answers to these questions that people asked that were going viral outside of the app. An American asking about child labor and a Chinese netizen replying, children wouldn't even be efficient workers. Use your common sense. Why don't Americans just vote against the TikTok ban? Free democracy, right? It was a lot of thought-provoking stuff. It just made you fondle your balls in contemplation. And it raised a bigger conversation on what kind of stuff you were actually technically even allowed to post on RedNote. One of the biggest criticisms a lot of people have been making from outside of the app is that the community guidelines and terms of service are all in Mandarin and therefore pretty inaccessible for any English-speaking user to parse on their own. I've looked up translations of the community guidelines and I didn't personally find them to be egregious, but short of copying and pasting the whole thing directly from the app and comparing notes, I'm relying on other people's interpretations of those guidelines. Again, I don't speak Mandarin. Like, there's supposedly a pretty strict stance on adhering to Chinese socialist values as defined by the Chinese government and constitution. A lot of people have been saying things that I can't find in these guidelines at all, like a bunch of unsourced tweets about how RedNote is supposedly banning the posting of any LGBT-related content. And I mean, we're not exactly great about queer rights in America, so other places having that issue wouldn't surprise me, but a wholesale ban on it feels incredibly unlikely when I saw this shit within like 2 swipes of being on RedNote.
How to say, girl, you look so stunning. In Mandarin Chinese, 姐，你太惊艳了， 姐，你太惊讶了。
At least as of me writing, you can find plenty of FAGs on there. And listen, I'm really not just here to say how sick everything on RedNote is and how everything is better on it. Like, if it's something you worry about, there are potential security concerns you should know about, where compared to TikTok, RedNote is actually under even more direct Chinese influence. Where TikTok had servers and was headquartered in America alongside Singapore, RedNote servers are located directly in China, making it potentially more susceptible to direct alleged CCP influence than TikTok was ever said to be under. The thing is, I don't think anybody joining RedNote, including myself, gives a shit. The app itself was said to be all chill vibes, but Americans choosing to go there over any number of more accessible alternatives was in part because it's Chinese. Going there instead of using Instagram Reels is kind of political in itself. It was a choice made by millions to tell the US government, eat shit, dude, we didn't want the TikTok ban. The issue that you brought up to say why you banned it, fuck it, we're going to a place where it's supposedly even worse as a way to stick it to you. Which of course raises the question of how long will this Americans on RedNote shit last? Will we continue to have access to it? The exact bill that targeted TikTok said that all apps from countries identified as foreign adversaries could be banned. And politicians like Tom Cotton, the fucking prick, have not shied away from this possibility.
Apps. He raised the question of RedNote. Well, guess what? If TikTok users flood to RedNote, they're going to face the same challenge there because it's also controlled by the Communist Party.
His cavalier attitude to people flooding over there because the TikTok ban was very unpopular aside, he's not wrong that it's technically a thing the app will have to contend with. If TikTok didn't reach the level of notoriety it got to, where it was overtaking American-based social media and market share, it probably would have been in a less precarious situation. And if RedNote continues to grow, it will likely face the same scrutiny, and it will probably take even less to ban it, considering precedent at this point since TikTok did get banned, and because it's directly based in China, not just by proxy. And I won't lie, it would kind of suck if the people who used it for niche purposes, like being able to stay in touch with Chinese culture when they're away from home, or people who were just into really niche fandoms, and they've been using the app in that way for years, if they lost access to it because of the attention brought to RedNote, because a bunch of people decided to join it either as a statement or because they didn't see anywhere else desirable to go, it's kind of shitty, man, and I'd feel a little bad. Ultimately, the blame's gonna lie with the US fucking government, but like still, in line with joining RedNote potentially being a action of protest, it is very funny to me that despite a general slant against really raw political discussion on the app existing, people were still like, I fucking love the CCP 2 seconds after joining. Please clip that out of context, that would be very funny. One of my favorite bits was that in the same way a single-digit amount of Europeans thought that Americans actually got an eagle when they turned 18, some Chinese folk were saying, listen, you get a panda when you turn 18 here, you just have to treat it really nice. It gives me hope that convergent thinking is real and not just a big made-up word for coincidence. There's a few other tidbits I wanted to put in here that I couldn't find a place for, so I'm just gonna stick them in at the end. I thought it was funny that some Americans were adopting the song Little Red Sun in the Sky as the anthem for being pro-China. You know, the same way that the mouthwashing fandom did for Headlock by Imogen Heap, or the cat tax that RedNote users exacted on TikTok refugees as payment for not speaking Mandarin, where you had to share a cute picture of cat as recompense. Those are the main two ones. This whole last few weeks has been a crazy sight to see, from the anxiety over if TikTok is going to get banned or not. Maybe it's unbanned right now. I don't know, man. I can't look into the future. And even if this whole thing where we were communicating directly with Chinese folk was a flash in the pan, I think it's been a really valuable moment for reaffirming how similar everyone on different sides of the planet can be in more ways than we aren't, and how valuable direct lines of communication are in almost every context. That's all I got. Be sure to drop a like and subscribe with notifications on if you enjoyed. Limited time merch in the description. Buy my stuff, give me money. Anyways, this has been Kwite, and I will see y'all next time.